Alrighty, I believe we are recording. Awesome. Close. And so my name is Kirsten, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I've been with Adventure Programs for over 4 years now. Rachel and Sydney are actually here. They're part of Adventure Programs as well. I think they're kind of here to help assist / learn more about plants. I'm not entirely sure. I would like to start off by acknowledging that we're fortunate to be able to study and work on the unceded traditional and ancestral territory of the Chumash people. Much of the knowledge that I share in these workshops comes from traditional ecological knowledge, preserved and passed down through thousands of years by Indigenous peoples. I hope that this presentation can do justice to the tradition of sharing knowledge about how to live off and protect the land, while also acknowledging that the past and present original inhabitants of this land have been irrevocably harmed in many ways. I realize that these are just words, but I hope that these words can create awareness and be a step towards future change. All right, and share screen. Oh, what's going on here? All righty. This workshop is called The Benefits of Native and Drought-Resistant Gardening. The purpose of this workshop is to learn more about the hows and whys of native and drought-resistant gardening. We'll discuss the benefits to native animals, the natural ecosystem, and the gardener, as well as the consequences of other kinds of gardening. I'll give you some tips and relevant plants to use, mostly related to California, but also maybe some for the Southwest or other like Mediterranean type regions. Please feel free to type any questions or comments or concerns in the chat, or if I invite you to turn your mic on, you're welcome to do that as well. This is one of those instances. I'd love to hear what you're doing at the workshop. If you have any questions before we start, or like, I don't know if you want to say anything before we're going, go ahead and turn your mic on or share in the chat. That'd be great. Oh, trying to figure out how to see the chat.
My mom's really into gardening, and so I want to like learn some new things, and she'll probably share them with her about native plants in California.
Awesome, thanks, Rachel. Anyone else want to share? All right, last chance, Sydney and Noelia. I don't know if you want to share, but I'm gonna keep going.
I guess I'm just looking for some general gardening tips because it doesn't really seem to be the strongest area of my life, but I try.
Great, thank you. All right, so in this presentation, I kind of define native plants as naturally wild-growing Californian plants that actually predate European contact. So I'm not thinking like stuff that Spaniards or the English brought over. I'm thinking things that maybe indigenous peoples, several hundred years ago were living with, interacting with. There's several definitions out there for native plants, and some of them don't predate European contact, and some don't even some predate even like indigenous cultures existing in an area, which is a whole nother topic, not for today, but kind of cool. So most of the plants that I'm talking about here are going to be native to California, or certainly able to survive and thrive in California. Some of them will be specific to Santa Barbara area. Some will have territories that are broader than that, like the Southwest. Thankfully, many genuses of plants that you can find in California are also elsewhere. We're not just, kind of an island. Drought-resistant plants or drought-tolerant plants are those that have evolutionary characteristics that allow them to thrive in low water conditions. I actually recently just learned that drought-resistant and drought-tolerant are different. They actually have different definitions. Drought-tolerant ones can survive through times of low water, but thrive better not during those times, whereas drought tolerant means that they actually just don't really need water. very much water. Obviously, everything needs water. But yeah, and so plants that aren't native that I bring up in this presentation are going to be able to survive in low water conditions. You might have noticed the trend of removing lawns and replacing them with fake turf. I'm here to tell you that there are a lot better options. Instead of considering replacing your lawns, instead of putting in turf, consider rock gardens, succulent gardens, native plant gardens, or some combination of all three. There's something called like xeriscaping, which is basically creating gardens and landscaping that is drought tolerant, drought resistant, or good for dry conditions, and that's kind of what we're talking about here today. Why should you native drought resistant garden? There are so many reasons that are relevant to us here in California, or for people that live in other areas prone to droughts. Many people take pride in the beauty of their gardens, as it can be an indication of maybe how wealthy they are, or how put together their lives are, or maybe how good their taste is. Unfortunately, people seem to think of native landscapes as messy and dirty. So when they think of native gardening, they think that they'll look just as bad. But I'm here to tell you that your native garden can be very beautiful and maybe even as magnificent as any other kind of garden. This is a picture from my dad's place, actually. And we kind of went in this part of the his landscaping, we kind of went with like a blended look. Like we left all of the wild plants. We didn't remove any of them. And we only just added kind of our own complementary twist to the landscape. Like I don't know if you can tell very well, but there's like daffodils, the yellow flowers lining down below. And that kind of went with the same color scheme that a lot of the native plants out there have, like the Astor's rabbit brush, which are just these like small yellow bushes, just hundreds of flowers all the time, all year, except winter, but most of the year. And I think this is a really good option. Like instead of just ruining the local ecosystem, kind of participate in it. Here, this is a different part of that property. We kind of played on the native pines and cedars by planting other kinds of evergreen trees that have lush needles year round. You just want to make sure that if you are planting evergreens, you're choosing ones that don't need a lot of water, because some of them do live in very wet places. This is another scene from one of my family's gardens, and we plant a lot of rock roses, which are these pink flowers in the front. And one of the cool things about rock roses, although these ones aren't native, they are drought resistant, and we do have native species within the genus that you can find in Santa Barbara area in the Los Padres mountain range. They have a little bit paler pink color, but they're just as like profuse flowering. They're very beautiful. Something else interesting that you can work with if you're in an area that isn't completely dry year round are water features. And you can't see it in this image, but like right behind all these pink bushes, we have like a small little pond that has water year round, and this actually helps attract wildlife. Like we have deer, birds, coyotes, etc. Like any kind of critter you can think of comes down and drinks from the water. So as long as you don't have pets to scare them off, that could be a really good option. It also helps pollinators and helps the plants in your garden grow, right? Because you got fresh water. I wouldn't recommend doing that in a place that doesn't get very much rain though. Like otherwise you're really kind of messing with the idea. Native oaks, pines, manzanitas, and other kinds of plants like that can be really great backdrops for the rest of your garden, I think. So, if you've got native trees, native bushes in your area, I'd recommend leaving them and just working kind of within that beauty. Add maybe little patches of color, your butterfly bush or your Cyanothe or your oleander. These are all plants that are either native to California or native to other Mediterranean regions. And they can be very beautiful. And some of them kind of follow the native color schemes. Like blues and yellows, and some are kind of just a little like, ooh, what's that? So that was all my dad's place, and I helped him with his gardening. But my mom's place, they're not together, obviously. My mom's place, I did pretty much all the landscaping for. Unfortunately, all of the pictures I could find of it were during a like just before evacuation from a fire, so they're all kind of smoky looking. But that being said, when it's not under fire threat, it's a very lovely garden, and we actually get lots of compliments from neighbors. So don't worry if you put enough effort in. Yeah, what's up, Rachel?
Where in California are both your mom and dad's places?
Yeah, so my dad's place is kind of like central eastern, and my mom's place is a little bit further north. So it's definitely a little bit
Okay.
wetter up there
Gotcha.
than Santa Barbara area, but most of these plants will do great in drier environments. My dad's place is actually, it's more cold than wet. I'd say it's probably drier than Santa Barbara area for the most part. Yeah,
Cool.
does that kind of answer your
Yeah.
question? Yeah, so the ecosystem type's definitely a little bit different. My mom's in the redwoods. My dad's in what's the word? Chaparral, which
Okay.
is all throughout California. The redwoods are definitely further north.
Gotcha.
If that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you put the effort in initially, people will appreciate what you do with the yard. Yet again, we see all the, I don't know if you can see the pink flowers in the background and the white flowers. That's oleander. We had that in some of the other pictures you've seen. Those are just great splashes of color. They're super drought resistant. Nothing eats them because they're toxic. So if you've got small children, wouldn't recommend that plant, but they are lovely. Other things that are flowering, but you can't really see in this picture, you got rosemary, sages, and lavenders. And these are all kind of blues and purples that I don't know exactly why it is, but it seems like drought resistant plants really like that color scheme. Um, you'll see a lot of those at like nurseries and such. The great thing about these families, though, is that there are different colors or different growing types, different shapes. You know, those plants in the front that are right above the what's the wall, the like wooden wall. Those can grow down, but there are some some species within the genus that will grow up. And lavenders have like multiple different. They're all purple as far as I know, but they have multiple different kinds of flower shapes and like shrub leaf types. Same with sage. I've actually seen reds, purples, whites, pinks, yellows in sages. Sages are pretty diverse, which is pretty cool. Other ideas, use the native rock as you're like digging holes for your plants. Use the native rock to like outline your garden or create features, or if you want to do a rock garden, use stuff that's native so it doesn't look out of place. And it's cheaper, it's free, it's already in your yard. My most recent gardening endeavor was actually two succulent gardens, one shade and one sun. This is like the day after it was planted. So I promise they've already grown a little bit. I was working on it during COVID, like nothing better to do. And yeah, succulents are great because they don't need a lot of water once they take off. They should be self-sufficient. I'd recommend that anywhere that you're not getting a lot of water. But some succulents like more water, some like less. So do try to do your research. All right, more reasons to want to start a native drought resistant or tolerant garden. I rarely, if ever, use fertilizers, and I never use pesticides or herbicides. If you've chosen the correct plants for this type of garden, they should thrive in native soils, and they should be mostly immune to the native pests, or at the very least resistant to them. Since I know we have gophers and deer in my area, I chose aromatic plants that taste bad to these pests, or that have roots that can survive a gopher's teeth. Other options are like oleander, they're toxic, so the critters aren't going to try to eat them. Oh, I spelled resilience wrong. Sorry about that. Um, there are also a lot of plants that can be great for local air and water supplies. Some plants can filter out toxins, and we know that plants do concentrate carbon, especially if you're doing like woody trees and shrubs. So you'll be helping contribute to reducing like CO2 from the atmosphere if you're climate oriented. Um, but yeah, so lots of good reasons. Also, especially native plants, but many drought resistant plants as well, have deep, pretty strong root systems. And this is because they are constantly searching for water. And so this can help control your like erosion problems in an area. Some people plant certain plants to control erosion specifically. And sometimes that just helps, for like, it's better than grass, basically. Grass has very short roots. Not only do you increase the biodiversity of the plant life when you have native and drought-resistant plants, you can also increase animal species biodiversity. We actually have an entire bachelor herd of deer, all males, that kind of comes through our yard every day, and a flock of turkeys that wander through my mom's yard. My dad's place, the one with the little pond, we've got frogs, toads, birds, bobcats, and whole families of foxes. To be fair, we're not in the city, but even within a city, you can attract many different kinds of critters like birds and lizards and such. Also, if you find frogs and toads in your yard, you know you're doing something right, because that means that your pollution levels, toxin levels are super low, and it's healthy enough for these very thin-skinned amphibians to survive. So once you start seeing that, you kind of know you did good. Yeah, and instead of creating a piece of land that's inhospitable to local animal and insect populations, like monoculture grasses, those are horrible for wildlife. With your native garden, you can have wildlife corridors that allow these critters to get safely and healthily from one end of their territory to the next. So you can participate in that part of nature. Additionally, pollinators are what make the world go round. Without them, we wouldn't have many of the fruits and vegetables that we eat. We might not even have some of the meat and dairy animals, because their feed is plants, and many plants do require pollination. When making your garden, consider including plants that are attractive to native and non-native pollinators. You'll not only be helping your local beekeepers, but you'll also be helping your local plant populations and even feeding native birds and squirrels. Finally, something that's near and dear to many of our hearts as Californians, wildfires are just a part of our lives. And sometimes our homes and our landscapes that we've created get caught in the crossfire. Fortunately, though, if you plant native plants, many of them have characteristics that allow them to resprout or otherwise survive after fires. My dad's place, which you just saw pictures of, actually burned down this summer, but less than a month after the fires, some of the giant oaks were already regrowing leaves, and the baby oaks were actually resprouting from the roots. And some other plants, like this non-native on the right, which is the acacia relative, we actually have wild acacias in California, they're also popping back up. So the world doesn't end when a fire comes through, especially if you're planting plants that can survive through horrible situations like that. Having these kinds of plants will also help with the environmental problems that follow fires. Erosion control, air and water purification, and reintroducing biodiversity are all super important after a fire. And with, just grasses, you're not going to be able to have any of these good things. My last page about reasons why you might want to get a native drought resistant garden. If you use native plants, they are already adapted to the soil type, weather conditions, low precipitation, and pests. You won't need to spend a lot of time or money on irrigation, pruning, or pesticides. Many of these plants need very little help after the first year or so, and can actually be left to their own devices unless you really want a more manicured look for your yard. Additionally, if you felt so inclined, instead of buying plants at a nursery, you could do what I do and collect wild seeds or take cuttings from local plants for free and just propagate them. Most of my plants, to be fair, I did buy at a store, but I am getting into propagation and seed collection. So I'm excited to see where that takes me. All right, I feel like I just talked a lot. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I can share some good plant options. What are you thinking?
Yeah, plant options would be great. Do you have any?
Thanks.
Like, what's your favorite drought resistant plant?
My
Or flower?
favorite? Well, I'm a big fan of rosemary. I think they're beautiful. I think they smell great. They're good at, um, you know, attracting bees, stuff like that. They're beautiful. That's the one that was kind of dangling down over the wooden like wall fence thing. Um, Honestly, many of the plants. Oh, indoor plants. Um, Noelia, are you looking for drought resistant and native indoor plants, or are you just looking for any kind of indoor plant?
Yeah, I was hoping for drought resistant from the Central Valley, so it's something I've been trying to get into.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, cacti and succulents are pretty easy to find, and they're good. Many of them can survive pretty well indoors. Most of the plants I have here that are native, I wouldn't try to grow inside. They're a little bit messier. They're self-shedding. Um, they're definitely outdoor plants. So like I think you could pretty easily get a succulent, water it every couple weeks, maybe even every couple months, depending on which kind you got. There's a lot of variety. Some of them are very beautiful. Some of them are a lot more exciting than other ones, like so it really depends. I don't have as much experience with cacti, but some people swear by them. And yeah, definitely get like a smaller genus of them though, not like the tuna, the giant tuna ones that grow native. Um, did that kind of answer your question, Noelia?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Um, what else we got here? Yeah, so some of my favorites that I grow, like I said, oleander, great. Sages, lots of different colors. They smell good. Super deer resistant, super drought resistant. Butterfly bush, you'll get birds, bees, bugs all over these. They they might have a slight smell, not super strong in the flowers, but the flowers are always gorgeous, and there's a couple different colors of them. I've only ever seen this purple one. Um, Lavenders, also aromatic, also deer resistant, also attract bees. They don't take too much work. So those were all non-natives. The following ones are native plants. Cyanothes. Southern California has a lot of blue cyanothes. Northern California has a lot of white cyanothes. I didn't even know blue cyanothes was a thing until I moved to Santa Barbara, or at least not like a wild thing. I thought it was something people had bred. These smell great. They're beautiful, attract pollinators, and I've never pruned a cyanothes in my life. They just kind of do their thing, like so low effort. If you like annual plants, you've got like Lupin. These come in a bunch of different colors. California, I've only seen purple and white native, but you can buy seeds for pink and like yellow, I think. Super cool. California poppy, same thing. That one had, because it's a state flower, it kind of has its own rules related to it, but you can buy seeds. Just don't like pick them or collect them in public land. I think that's illegal. This is the rock rose flower. They're great. You can also find the native lighter pink ones. And if you prefer trees, I think Buckeyes are great. The seeds they produce are toxic, so if you have a dog, wouldn't buy this plant, but they are beautiful. Manzanitas, if you love that red bark color, they're very lovely. They have tiny little white flowers. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. And thanks for coming. My next workshop's next Tuesday at 8 California time as well. This one will be about weeds, so that'll be interesting. If you have any questions, let me know now. I'll stick around for a bit. If you want the recording, send me your email. I can do that. Yeah. Have a good evening, everybody. I'll stop recording. How do I do that?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.